So what we're going to do now is we're going to create just a simple web page, and we're going to put everything in the web page for now, unless you're opposed to that and you want to see how would you do it with multiple files. Quick show of hands. Anyone want to do put all in one? Are we okay with that? Let's put all in one. Keep it simple. All right, so I'm just going to right click. Actually, no, I'm not going to right click. I'm just going to get this path here so I know where we're at. I'm going to go to Atom, and I'm just going to go ahead and close out some of these windows here. I'm going to get my little crud. Oh, there we go. I don't know what's going on with this window. Weird. Sorry, I'm just trying to clean it up. Add project folder. I'm just going to go into this folder here. All right, so basically I've added just this new folder here. I'm just calling it Mobile First Navbars with Flexbox, excuse me. And then I'm just going to right click and create a new file this way. And then it's just, I'm going to give this index.html. This is standard convention. On a live production website, index is the most common title for the home page, and it provides a little bit of security for your folder so that no one can just access all the content in your folder. It kind of locks it so that when someone tries to open your folder, it just takes them to the home page. And so if you've ever done a Google search where you search for something and you find out, you click a link and suddenly you're looking at a directory with a bunch of files in there, that's because they never put an index page on there, so that you now suddenly can see everything that's on there and unrestricted kind of. It's kind of a minor point, but it is very much convention to call it index. So there we are, index.html. I got the folder there. And I'm just going to go ahead and do, remember, you have to save it as .html to get the code completion to work. I'm going to hit HTML. That's going to give us the doc type. And we're going to call this mobile first navbar. All right. And for a mobile first navbar, I'm going to explain it so that you can kind of get caught up with titling, with doing your title, is we're going to go over just a couple elements of a web page that are new. I say it new, but it's been around long enough now. I'm going to give you some of the HTML5 tags that are for layouts. So we're going to assume we're going to make a full layout. And so the first one is the header. And so that's where you put your header information. So you could put your title, page title goes in there, and you could do like a tagline or something. So if I was going to do a tagline, what I might do is put a P and then give it a class of tagline, and then now, sorry, I'm going to have to turn on the wrap. I'm going to click View, toggle Soft Wrap. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. Okay. So you got your header, which is kind of like where you'd see the branding, logo, maybe a big image or whatever. Some people might put in nav bars. They might put it at the top of the header. They might put it at the bottom of the header. So like where we put it is really up to us. And so there's no right or wrong answer here. If you were going to put the nav bar at the very top, you got two options. You could put it at the beginning of the header. You could even put it before the header. Or you could put it at the bottom of the header, and with CSS you can switch the order in which it's displayed. So for example, I could put a nav right before the header. I could put it right after the header. I'm just going to do that after the header. There's no, like I said, no right or wrong. It's just you got to make a decision at some point. So the nav, of course, is for a navigation set of links. And we know that to have a navigation bar, we need hyperlinks. So the question is, how do we want to add the hyperlinks? And so the most common way to do a nav bar would be to create what's called an unordered list. And we would list out our links. That would be the semantic way to do it. And it's going to give us a lot of tags to help us create that nav bar. So this is by far most common way to do it, but you may find some exceptions to that. So we're going to create in the nav a UL, and then I'm going to create a list item. Okay, so a UL, you might be wondering, what does that stand for? That stands for an unordered list. So a bullet list is an unordered list where the order in which they appear is not significant. So if you're going to do a top 10 list, then you'd want an ordered list. But in this case, we could switch the order of our tags, and it's not that significant. Plus, when we're done with the nav bar, you're not going to see numbers next to them. So there's really no reason to make an OL. But you could just as easily do it. Okay, so you see the outer tag is a nav, then a UL, and then inside I have a list item, and we're going to create a hyperlink using the anchor tag A. So I just type A and I hit enter. Notice it has this href equals. That stands for hypertext reference, and it's saying basically where are we going to go when we click the link. So the home page is usually the first one, and our home page is index. So I'm just going to go ahead and put down index.html, and then I'm going to write home. Okay, very common. Okay, so first one clicks to home, and then we're going to have some other links, but we're not going to build out our site at this point. We're just making a nav bar. So we're not really concerned with going places. So we're going to do a very common trick for people who generate layouts, and that is to just have dummy links that don't actually go anywhere. And there's a lot of ways to do this. Sometimes I just encourage my students to basically just to copy that list item and paste it multiple times. But with the Atom editor, it's just as easy to just type li, hit enter, a, hit enter. Now you notice there's a hashtag right in there or a pound sign. That is used for internal links. So you ever see a document where you click it and you just go further down in the document? That hashtag actually represents an ID or a name attribute. So if I were to put, for example, food here, it would look for a tag that had an ID or a name of food, and then it would go there. So in this case, we're just not going to put anything after it. We're just going to put hashtag, which basically is just saying, go to the ID of the current page. If we don't put a hashtag, it won't act like a link. So we need that there at the very least. And then we could have whatever we want to call it, people. Control-Shift-D. When do you do that?
Yeah, so select your line, select one of your list items, and then just Control-Shift-D.
Control-Shift-D. 1, 2, 3. Wait a minute. What's that?
Yeah, it's working fine.
It's clicking dots, and it's like, okay. It did work.
Yeah.
How do I get out of this thing?
It's your recorder. Your recorder probably has a separate.
Oh. Why didn't I know that?
That's pretty cool. That's cool.
It is, but now how do I get out of this?
Yeah.
Hey, it did. All right, it's a toggle. All right, I can't do it that way, so I'm just going to do it this way. L-I-A, right, arrow, places. And then the ever favorite, stuff. I was just going to do about us. Okay. I think 5 links, pretty good. That's standard for a navbar. I've seen 3 links on a navbar. I've seen like 20 in a nested list and crazy. We're just going to stick like this. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video for just a second. Okay, so I've made some changes. And so one of the things I'm going to do is talk about Git just a little bit again, since I started with Git. Git, of course, basically is a history of your project. And what you want to do is, first of all, let me go back a step. Have you ever been in this situation? You're working on a project and you're coding it, and everything looks great. And then you try something new, and then you screw it up. And then you're like, oh, where was I? I need to go back to where I was an hour ago, but I don't remember what I did. Okay, this is what Git excels at, because as soon as I have something that works and looks good, and I'm about to try something that's potentially stupid, um, I wanna save a snapshot of that. So that's really what Git primarily does. So, but before I'm going to save a snapshot, I better make sure it looks right, it does what I think it's going to do, whatnot. So I'm just going to right click, and I'm just going to right click on the file, and I'm just going to click Show and Explore so I can see it. I'm going to double click that file, and there it is. Page title, web page tagline goes here, home, people, places, stuff about us. Okay, very boring, right? All right. Oh, it's beautiful? Okay, thank you. Okay, so for the next part of creating the nav bar, the first thing we want to do is turn this into, say, a general um, horizontal nav bar to begin with. And then we'll use flexbox. We'll get into flexbox in just a moment, but we're going to get a couple of things in place and ready to go. The idea of flexbox, just so you know, to kind of help here, it's the CSS guide to flexbox is what we're going to use. And honestly, if you just Google Flexbox, it's always the first link. And so this is a really good one here. And the idea of the Flexbox is you have a container or a parent, and you have its children. Okay, so you have different properties you can apply to the parent, and then some of you apply to the children. Now let me just show you what those are. So the parent in this case is UL. The children are the LI. Okay. And so we're going to target both UL and LI with Flexbox. But before we do that, it's definitely important to take a look. I'm just going to show you kind of what we're going to do to our page on here. So one of the things we want to do is we want to get rid of these bullet points. So we want to get rid of those. We also, and it's just optional, we're going to remove those underlines. Okay, but you know, most nav bars don't have them underlined. If you want to, that's great. You want to keep it, that's fine, but I'll show you how to remove them. The other thing is we talked a little bit yesterday about block and inline tag. And as I mentioned, a block tag is one that just takes up the full width of the screen. And each list item in our bullet list takes up the full width of the screen. So if we want to display it horizontally, we have to allow it to display side by side. And there's a lot of techniques, because before Flexbox, they figured it out. They used float. There's another way you can display it as an inline block. So it acts like a block, but it also just takes up whatever width it has. I've discovered Flexbox does so much of this without having to even worry about it. So we're going to do Flexbox, but I could just show you real quickly what it looks like. We're going to get rid of a couple of these. Some things we have to target the UL. Some things we have to target the list item, and some things we have to target the hyperlink. So we got 3 different tags that we're going to be addressing as we go, and this can be confusing if you. It takes a while before you start remembering what does what, and so this is one of those that we're just going to kind of hit it and talk and do it. Couple things is you got to be careful when you are doing a nav bar, because many times you want to style lists on a web document. You might have a bullet list somewhere where you're listing things out, and it's not going to have links. So you don't want to make it look like a nav bar. You want it to look like a list. So we have to find a way to target this in a way that only targets what we want to turn into a nav bar. And there's options for how to do it. We could target just UL, LI, and A's when they appear inside of a nav element. We could also give the nav an ID and target those that are inside the ID. Or we can target the UL and save ourselves a little work. And so I'm going to target the UL in here, not the nav. I might decide later on, maybe I want to add some kind of interesting background color and do some other things with the nav, but I'm just going to avoid that in this case. But you can target the nav and do other things with it. Okay, so we can add a class or an ID. And this is that one part where I say you know what, this is a one-time navbar. I'm just going to target by ID, even though some people will say that's overkill. And remember, the reason why the people would say it's overkill is that if you target by ID, you can't change it through a class. You have to target by another ID that ranks higher. So there's this whole ranking system of, what styles are going to be targeted and why and when and where. And I can't get to all the details of that. We're just going to hit it and just do that anyway. So UL is already it's an unordered list, and we can just call this main nav or global nav. I'm just going to call it main nav. Okay. So you can call it whatever you want, but if you're following along, you probably just want to give it main nav, since that's what I'm going to be coding. Otherwise, it can be confusing. I would rather not add classes and IDs to my list items and hyperlinks, so I'm going to leave those alone. And so anytime I want to target, we'll target through the context of where it fits. You'll see what I mean. All right, so keep that in mind as we go to target this. In fact, I think I'm going to split this screen again like we did the other day. So I'm going to split it off to the right. And you just got to know that on one side we'll be looking at the CSS. So on the left we'll be doing CSS. On the right we're just looking at the HTML. Is that confusing to anyone? Or is that okay? I like to be able to see what I'm targeting first. I'm very visual. And so we're going to go ahead and do that. So like I said, we're going to get rid of the bullet points. And I believe that's done through the UL. UL is a main nav. Okay. So if we want to target by ID, we target using hashtag main nav. And then I'm going to put my curly braces, or just braces. And by the way, if it helps, you might want to just go ahead and type UL hashtag main nav, and then you'll know that, oh, it's an unordered list that's a main nav. Sometimes doing that is to help me, the coder, so I know what I'm looking at. It helps because we're saying this is an unordered list that has main nav. It's easier for me to then go, oh yeah, that's where main nav happens to be. All right, so it's list style type. What kind of a list style type is it? So you've got some options when you create an unordered list. You can make it a circle, a disk, and I think by default it's disk, and we're just going to put none. So by targeting list style type of none, that gets rid of the list item. So here, what I'm going to do is move this over to the side. Oops, I want this moved over. Sorry about that. Do that full screen, and there we go. Oh, we lost that list style type none. Why is it not going more narrow? It won't let me go more narrow than that. Sorry about that. I just want to be able to show you side by side. List style type none. When I hit refresh, bullets go away. You'll still see there's some margin or padding. We don't know which. So sometimes it's best to just get rid of them both. Or what I like to do is get my developer tools out and see what's going on. Highlight over here. UL, you see that green there? That means it's padding. So I'm going to get rid of the padding. And I'm going to hit refresh. Bam. Now they're all off to the left. So I've gotten rid of the bullets. I got rid of padding. I'm done with that. I'm going to get rid of the underlines on the hyperlink. In order to do that, I'm going to target main nav space A. When we use a space and we have two selectors, we're saying, in this case, the one on the left is the parent, and the one on the right is one of its descendants. And I say descendant using kind of the family tree sort of model. In fact, HTML documents are actually considered, from a computer science standpoint, a tree, where you have basically like a root and nodes that kind of branch off of it. So body has a header, a nav, and a nav has a UL and an LI has an A. Well, by default, basically the UL has a child of LI, and that LI has a child, so this becomes a descendant of the UL. And so this is called a descendant selector. And in this case, we want text decoration of none. Now, hyperlinks go away. Okay. We're gonna do a little bit more fancy work with this. We're gonna style up our hyperlinks to look like buttons now. And we're gonna do all of this first, and we'll do the flexbox last. Okay, and then we'll do mobile first after that. Okay. Okay. So to do this, our hyperlinks are inline elements. And as inline elements, there are certain things we can't target. So what we're going to do is we're going to display. And by the way, the display property we've already used yesterday, but we're going to use this a lot today. Display is really cool. It allows you to make one tag behave like another tag. So if I say display block, it'll say make the hyperlink display as if it were a block level tag. And then that allows me now to create padding, to create a background color, and to make it so that the whole hyperlink, including the padding, now targets the click. So right now as it stands, take a look at this. If I hover my mouse just outside of the E, or just above or just below, you got to kind of get right close to where the text is. We want to make that easier to click with our fat French fry fingers, right? We want to make sure that we can get that. So once we display it as a block, we're going to add some padding. And I'm going to use my default 0.5 EM. That's for top and bottom, and 1 EM for left and right. And we're going to add a background color, and we're going to need to get some colors that we can use. So we're going to start with that, and we'll just do a background color. For now, I'm just going to do a placeholder, 336699. And then in this case, this is really important with hyperlinks. You give a background color, make sure you consider color as well. So I'm going to add color of white or almost white. So I'll do a F1, F1, F1. Not quite white. And hit refresh. Bam. Now, we pretty much have a vertical navbar at this point, right? The only thing is there's no hover effect. See that? All right. Do I need a pause for anyone? So to hover, the hover effect is use what's called a pseudo selector. Why is it called pseudo? I'm not entirely sure. And it's : hover. If someone wants to find out and tell me, I will be very happy. I'll get you a coffee during lunch and water and maybe even lemonade on me. All right. Okay, so on the hover, this is my favorite technique, is I'm just going to swap out the two colors. So they're just going to reverse them. Because if you notice that 3369 and the white or almost white look good, it's got a good high contrast. If you don't believe me, we'll run it through the color contrast analyzer. I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to click in here and paste. And now this is my favorite little hack here. So I copy both background color and color, and then I just cut the background dash and I paste it in front of color. And if you know your keyboard shortcuts, it's even faster. And save. Hover, and now, okay. Technically, this is mobile first, because on a mobile device, if we were to try to display them side by side, they probably wouldn't all fit, right? And so now, if you want to get a little fancy, you could add a border to the bottom of each of these. Border bottom. And then we're going to just do the shorthand. So we're going to do 1 px solid, and then we're going to do that almost white. Like so. Save our changes. Hit refresh. Now the nice thing about that almost white is you don't actually see that border on the bottom because it just kind of like gets swallowed up by the white background, the default white background. But if we want to, at some point, I can show you how to just select the very last item and remove it. But for now, I think we're good. Okay, let's not make it too complex. And there's our vertical nav bar. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah. All right, are we ready? Ready for the next step. Okay, so since I said this is basically works right here as a horizontal nav bar, and we said we're doing mobile first, since that's mobile friendly, we just did a mobile first design. Now, the question is, do we want to keep it that way? Probably not. So, for example, let's do this full screen. Now we're using up a lot of real estate that we could be using our content and our click here and our whatever ad revenue stream comes from or whatever we're going to do, right? So on a full screen, we want to have it a horizontal layout. All right, before I do this, I want to show you just a couple things about responsive web design. I'm going to use W3 Schools as the source for it. And I'm using this because they do a really good job of explaining this. Okay, it's real hard if all your designing is done on a desktop computer or laptop because you're seeing a wider screen, higher, high resolution. So you really got to test this out. So the first thing I want to show you for testing out that I do is I just resize the browser. So I make it as narrow as I can get. Oh, I know what happened with my browser, why it wouldn't get any more narrow. It's my tabs and layer disease. Got to keep that one open, but I don't need that. 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 Oh, I like that. I can come back to it later, but I'm just going to try to get rid of some of these. Okay, so at this point, now I got fewer tabs. And now I can get it a little more narrow. So that's one way of testing mobile. So this is actually the way I do it to begin with. I make it as narrow as I can get it, see what it looks like. That's not bad at all, right? So that's pretty good. And part of this is because that font is a little bit on the large size. But sometimes mobile, you need their text a little bit bigger. The other way we can do this is using the developer tool. You see that little icon there? Toggle device toolbar. Hey, look at that. Isn't that pretty cool? So now you can see what it looks like, responsive. And I click Galaxy S5. Now, of course, this is at 40% view, so you want to probably see it at 100% view or whatever. And then nothing is quite the same as just getting out a device and trying it on there. That's really usually the best. But it's pretty cool. You got Nexus iPhone 6 Plus. Let's just see what that looks like.
Chris,
Yeah.
if you get a chance, check out a web browser called Blisk, B-L-I-S-K. It will show you the actual phone interface for the popular phones off to the side.
Oh, that's cool.
It's Chrome-based. Downside is for free, you only get access to that for 30 minutes a day.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. So Blisk, and it's its own browser? Oh.
Exactly.
So that's all we need is another web browser for us to hack and figure out how does it look good on this browser.
Right.
That for me, doing web design, it's like the bane of my existence is every time a new browser comes out or an existing browser changes some aspect of it. Anyway, but I definitely want to look at it. Blisk. All right, put a little note on there. I'm going to take this off now because I honestly, I like to just do it this way. Just resize it and then just see how it looks. Okay, that all being said, we're going to go to W3 Schools. And I want to just go over their guide on responsive. So I think it's under Learn CSS or it could be under Tutorials. And well, I'll start with Learn CSS. I'm not seeing it right there. And it's basically a set of tutorials. There we go. CSS responsive. And we're just going to take a look at a couple of these pages so I can just kind of show you kind of what's going on. So responsive web design, I've sort of showed you how, like, based on the width of the screen, it adjusts what it presents and how it's displayed. So on desktop, you can see the 3-column layout, but on tablet, it might change a little bit. It might take the sidebar and drop it underneath. And then on a phone, you'll see this. There's a horizontal nav bar. It takes up the width of the screen. All right, so that's just an overview of responsive, okay? So the next thing here is the viewport this is an important step here to understand. Have you ever gone to a website on your phone and seen something like this? And no matter what you do, you cannot, you got two options. You can try to get out a magnifying glass and read the text. And if you're like me, it's really hard. Or you can enlarge it. You can like zoom in by the pinch, and you do that little where you zoom in. But suddenly now they all extend off the page, and you have to scroll left to right and up and down, and you can't read it. Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to eliminate that. No web designer should ever present that, and it's an abomination if you ask me. So. Sorry, it's a little hardcore there. But look at this. We got a nice little tag here, setting the viewport. Okay, now I'm really curious. I'm going to copy and paste it in, but I bet Adam has a nice little shortcut for that particular one. I'm really curious as to what that is and how to do it. But I'm just going to copy it here and talk about what is going on with that. So we're just going to paste that in, and I'm going to put it after the style tag. It could go anywhere, but just make sure it's in the head, and I paste it. Meta, name equals viewport, content equals. Okay, so here's what we're saying. We want to basically say with a viewport, we want to set the width based on that particular device's width, and it will get it. So any browser on a mobile device knows it, right? So we can get that information. So we're going to set it to the device width. And then we're going to set the initial scale to 100%. So no matter what we had anywhere else, it'll be 100% view. Honestly, if you just add that to every web page you've ever created, you've already done wonders for your audience just by doing that. Okay.
And then outside the style tag always.
Outside the style tag, yes, absolutely. It could come before or after. And I'm going to save it. But now, what I want to just do is I'm going to type meta. Curious. Yeah, see there. Why? Why does it go right to Twitter? All right, someone needs to research a hack on here. Like, I bet it's something like viewport. MB.
Yeah, you need to be able to customize, I guess, that default.
Yeah.
HTML, put down all that
Yeah.
stuff for you.
This is why they call it the hackable editor. So that you can do it. I just don't know where and how, and I got too many other things I want to do and have to do that I'm never just going to get that done. Sorry. Someday. All right, so anyway, so that's the first step. Very important step here because this is going to allow us to do a lot of other stuff. Once we have that dialed in, we can now do a thing called breakpoints. And so what are breakpoints? We're going to go back to the W3 schools, and we're going to look at their, what do they have? Media queries. See if they do anything about breakpoints on here. Well, actually, a great way to talk about breakpoint is just to look at these designs here. Desktop, tablet, phone. A breakpoint is just where you set when do you change the layout based on the size. And it's based on the size. You can do a greater than or lesser than a certain value. Usually I use pixels. I think that's the way to do it. I don't know if there's another way. I don't do it any other way. There might be, but I just don't know. So some people, like if you go to Bootstrap, for example, we'll just use there as an example since we're going to be doing some Bootstrap later. And you do the getting started. At some point they talk about breakpoints. I think it could be on here. Definitely they do it on the grid. Yeah, let's just go to the grid. CSS, grid system. All right. So here, and by the way, this is a great place to go because here you got your syntax for creating a breakpoint. So you'll see this here. By the way, so let's just analyze this just a little bit here. So media query is what we're going to do. And each query, it will start with at something. In this case, at media. If you want to, you could put at print, and you can create a set of styles just for when you print the web page. And so you just do at print, and then you do curly brackets, and everything inside of the curly brackets would be your styles for when you're printing it on a printer. So that's kind of cool. But in this case, we do these at media, and then in parentheses, you set up what's going on. So you have this min width, and by the way, this at screen, this is like a programming thing that they're doing, and we're not going to do it that way, but this at least gets it sort of started. But you'll see here, these are comments, and they're saying here that they created a breakpoint for small devices. And they have decided that tablets are 768 pixels and larger. And that a medium device, a desktop, somehow they've decided desktops are 992 pixels. And large desktops are 1200 pixels. And so they've already decided this is what it's going to be. I say that's fine for them because they've already decided all their styles or whatever. But for me, that does not necessarily hold true. And so I do what's called mobile first. I design for mobile, and then I start expanding. And as soon as I feel like I can fit my horizontal nav bar and I feel like it's kind of good, then I do it. And so I don't know what that's going to be because my nav bar might change. And so you may have to go in and change it or whatever, but I say, and a lot of people are saying this if you go online, they just say, figure out what your own breakpoints are. Don't worry about like figuring out what device you want to, you can't develop for every single device. They keep coming out with different screen sizes and different pixel densities and whatever. So it's usually just best to just follow a general guideline of just kind of work out your design. So what is that? I'm not sure. So I'm going to start by just grabbing this right here as my little example here. Okay. I'm going to keep this, even the comment, I'm just going to copy it right out of here. Copy and paste is your friend. Now, I'm going to go up here just a little bit, just kind of walk through. We've got a style guide right here. And in here, these styles are for mobile. They all work on mobile, and they'll work for everything else after it, right? Anything larger. This is for everything, right? So if we design for mobile, we've done it first. So next, after we've done for mobile, we're going to paste this in, and we're going to design for a slightly larger size. And, I might just say, tablets. We'll just keep it like this. Small device tablet, 768 pixels and up. So I'm always going to do a minimum width on each of my breakpoints, and I'm just going to increasingly get larger and larger and larger, wider, wider, wider. It's a lot easier to just be methodical about it. Now, I'm really curious about this because I don't recall. We may run into a little bit of an issue with this using a comment in a style tag. I don't recall. I thought I remember having some kind of comment do something weird on it, but maybe that was an older time. Maybe we're okay. First thing we want to do is we're going to add. We're going to use flexbox. Okay. So let's just quick look at flexbox to do this, and we'll come back to that in just a moment. Actually, I probably got rid of flexbox, so let's just do flexbox, complete guide. And so container is our UL, our children are the list items. So remember I did that display of block on the hyperlink? Well, to make a flexbox, you just add display flex to our container. So let's go ahead and do that. So I go up to my, where was it? UL hashtag main nav, and I'm just going to write here display flex. And flex can deal with vertical or horizontal. Okay. In fact, I'll show you what's cool about flex is that flex deals with directions. We can switch the order in which they appear. So we can go from left to right or right to left. We can go from top to bottom or bottom to top. So we can upend everything. We could just reverse all the order of our links. And that's where it gets really interesting. We can have all of our items, by default, all the items, if we do a horizontal display, they'll all take up even width, or we can like make some wider than others, so we can play around with that stuff. So everything on the left column is for the parent. You have flex direction. Default is row. So left to right as a row is the default setting. So what did I just do? By doing display flex, when I hit refresh, I just made that a horizontal nav bar. But that's not mobile first anymore, right? So the first thing I want to do on our mobile is we want to change that and set it back to where it was, which is column. Okay. So we're going to, so this is, by the way, that is, I was flex direction. So check this out. So we're going to do, right after display flex, I put flex direction. And I love Adam because now I got all my options. I know what they are. Oh yeah, column, column, reverse. Start with column. Save our changes. Display it on our page. Hit refresh. Remember, we wanted it mobile first anyway. Move this over here. Click that. Because I want you to be able to see. Where did that go? Yeah. So there it is. Flex direction column, right? Home, people, places, stuff, about us. What if we want to do column reverse? Okay. Just add the word reverse. And now it's about us, stuff, places, people, home. Of course, we can also do row reverse, refresh. Now look at this. My horizontal nav bar actually fits in the screen width. Theoretically, I could just go ahead and just set this now. One thing I do want to do is I want to break this. So let me just. That's why they're called breakpoints, by the way. We're breaking it. I think I just closed that.
Do you have a practical reason why you might do either of these reverse layouts displays?
Not necessarily reverse per se. I could show you. I think I have a code pen on this. I might want to get this here. Let me just close these YouTube links. I don't need those anymore. I'm just trying to close some of these links here that I don't need. I'll just come back to Socrates. So I want to just see. Okay, it's broken at this point, right? Because there's that link. I can't read it anymore. So one of the things I want to do, and about us now, like spills over to the next line. That's still broken in my opinion. So now notice as I move that, do you notice the little numbers appearing? That's giving me the width and the height. So as I pull it out, I realize, look at that, at 422, this horizontal nav bar actually fits. So what I could do is I could make it, and I'll get back to that question, by the way. I haven't forgotten. I'm going to do a flex direction of column here, save my changes, and then I'm going to switch it on once I get to I'll say maybe 450, let's say. So I want to copy that UL main nav. Actually, I won't copy. I'll just come down here. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of that. I want to set the min width, but I'm going to set it in pixels. So I'm going to set the min width at, I don't know, 450, I think I said. Something like that, 450 px. So when it's at least 450 pixels wide or wider, then I want to do the UL, what was that, main nav. And now all it is flex direction Now I'm going to make it row. Wait, does it say row? Yeah, row, because it's displaying as a row. Save my changes. So just to recap the code, just want to point out, and I'll hover over here. Again, we set display of flex already, so that's good every size. And then on mobile first, we set flex direction to column under UL hashtag main nav. And then on our @media min width 450 px, we set that UL main nav as a flex direction of row. So at 450 pixel width, it'll now be a horizontal navbar. And there's our responsive site. Go back here, hit refresh. There it is. Look at that. And that's the essence of responsive design. So mobile first, you just design for mobile. So a lot of times I just make this as narrow as I can get it and do all my design. And I put in typography. I make a horizontal nav bar. If you want to get all fancy with those menus, with the little, the little pop-up, or even collapse it. I mean, we could look at that a little bit later, and that would be a good JavaScript. But in essence, we've basically done it. Now, this is a little bit scary because what if we end up adding links or we change the text on there? So you might, and at this point, this really doesn't look bad, right? But I'd say by around here, you probably want it. So you can fiddle around with these numbers. So like 500 is not a bad idea. And then, of course, at this point, I just need to put small devices. And I'll just change that to 500 px about.
Well, is there a way to put in multiple so you can have the small device parameters?
Yep.
And then
Yeah, so then you just do another @media. And then you put here, oh, look at that. Min width. And then maybe the next breakpoint you discover is 700 px. And then you add your styles there. Hold on. 2 @signs. We don't want that. Okay. And then you can add your styles, There you go. And so you just keep repeating it. The trick to this is going to be, especially if you're new to CSS, is all those curly brackets. You could easily get lost and break it because you forgot to close one or you didn't stick it inside of another. Another thing that happens a lot with students in CSS is they forget to put a semicolon. And it's okay if it's the last declaration of a block, but if it's an earlier one, it breaks everything else after it, and it's hard for students to find where the problems are. Anyway, so I'm going to pause here. You can pause here to look at the code of what I've done. Following. And that's all I have to say about that.